about your name. 'Cause we were all Americans before the hyphens came.
Howdy, folks. This is Doc Owen. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show live on Spreaker.com. It was a little questionable there for a minute with about 2 minutes to airtime. For some reason, our audio, the microphone wasn't showing up, so I'm hoping it's coming across pretty well. But it should be. It's registering on our dashboard, showing us that it's working, but it's not really working consistently as high as it should. But we'll get her done. You're listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Doc Owen. We are all over the social media, Facebook, Twitter, have a blog at docowenshow.com. Email me at docowenshow@gmail.com. I can be found, and I'm out there. We are not going to have the phones live tonight simply because we've got so much to cover and such a active show that I wouldn't want to mislead you and think that we had the capability of jumping in there. So we did do, if you're not familiar, we did a podcast. I believe it was this past Monday or Tuesday. I forget which night it was, but we did a special podcast. The title of it was Immigration or Invasion, and it was totally focused on the issues surrounding the southern border of the United States, mostly in the state of Texas, because that's what we're the most familiar with and had the greatest access to the current information. We will definitely deal with some more of that tonight. I would urge you to go out to the podcast, and if you're not familiar, that all that is really is, it's like listening to a tune or listening to a record. Pod simply stands for play on demand. So it's a new term for a broadcast that was pre-recorded. Could be a tape, could be, and it happens to be digital in this case. So don't let the terminology be off-putting to you. Go ahead and you can go to the blog, docowenshow.com. The latest one will play automatically, and you can work your way around and find some of the historical issues. One other announcement about social media. It's not occurring soon, but I want to keep it at the top of your mind. The second Wednesday of every month, we have a new meetup here in San Antonio, Texas, and would love for you to join us if you are local or close to local. And it is called Off the Clock with Doc. And if you're not a member of meetup.com, please go join and put in your information, select your alternatives, things you're interested in, and you'll be invited to various meetups. And you will probably get an invite to Off the Clock with Doc. If you don't, then search for Off the Clock with Doc and invite yourself. We always start the show with a quotation from Crowned Grace International on leadership. And before I do that, I thought I would tell you, I was lucky enough this week, the day after the podcast, so that reminds me the podcast was Monday. On Tuesday, I spoke at the San Antonio Optimist Club luncheon and basically delivered 15 to 20 minutes of the same information that I delivered in 45 minutes on the podcast. But what they gave me was really interesting. It was a little pamphlet of 250 leadership-type optimistic quotations. So it really will come in handy. I'll get to use those and transfer some of that information to you guys. The one this week is from somebody that absolutely, you've heard a lot of people say it's one of those people that needs no introduction, but they still do the introduction. This is a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And the quote is, "Everyone is born an original, but most die as copies." I told a friend of mine that before I used it, and he was referencing, he had a biblical reference to it, and that sent him down a completely different path, that we are all formed in Jesus' image, and that was the way he was going, so it rather confused him. I think what Mr. Lincoln was talking about was more about the fact that we grow up with, or we start out with, the ability to think and to reason and to produce logic on our own part. And you'll know this from school. And yet, at the same time, a lot of times in school, you are expected to regurgitate what the teacher has taught, whether you agree or not. So if you want an A grade, you kind of have to think like the teacher. Not in all cases. I'm just saying in some cases. And if you've got a good teacher, that's certainly not the case. A good instructor wants you to challenge the instructor's point of view and add more value. That's how, as an instructor, we learn, because the young people in the class generally say, wait a minute, have you thought about this? And they have new inputs of data. So I'm just saying. What the first article I've got for you might come as a bit of a challenge to my traditional listeners. All right? It's an article about the Tea Party. It has 5 reasons why the Tea Party is committing political suicide. I'm not going to go into all of the detail. I am going to give you the highlights. And I will tell you, I had somebody from the Optimist Club presentation that asked for the articles and asked for my sources of data, not in terms of questioning, but in terms of doing further research. And it made me think. I usually wind up with about anywhere from 15 to 20 different articles that I use through the show as points of reference. And I will try over the course of, it'll take quite some time, but we will try to start getting these articles referenced, at least links to them, because everything is interactive and over the internet, at least links to them posted on the blog and or on Facebook. I probably use the blog because it's easier to do. And that way you can go to DocOwenShow.com and dig a little further in than me just giving you the highlights if some of these articles are of particular interest. So the 5 reasons the Tea Party is committing political suicide. Why would someone think that was the case? Because the Tea Partiers are violating hardcore laws of marketing and campaigning that the rest of American politics have followed for decades, thinking they know better or that it doesn't matter. Absolutely not the case. Here are the 5 irrefutable standards of marketing that they're talking about. Political confrontation is turning off, is turning off the voters needed to win. I've been telling you this for months, particularly the millennials. They're tired of the bickering between the two parties. They're tired of the bickering within parties. They want solutions. Political confrontation is turning off the voters needed to win. Tilting at political windmills. Tea Partiers we all tend to pick saints. Sarah Palin, Ted Cruz. We all tend to get involved with somebody and, put them up on a pedestal. That doesn't work. That's the next one, actually. Adulation of people like Ted Cruz. It doesn't bode well. It looks like folks in the Tea Party are shallow thinkers, and I really don't think that's the case. An unwillingness to accept that there are political realities that must be respected. And a dependence on Congress to get things done against an administration that is flipping off the House of Representatives at every turn. And it wouldn't matter who was Speaker. In other words, case in point, the lawsuit against the president. Give me a break. They're wasting our time and our money because they're not going to pay for it out of their pockets. Let's talk about a few of the gates. The IRS gate has taken a new turn. They have issued a subpoena or arrest warrant for Lois Lerner, but there are those that think that they've left out one of the most important issues. And it's supported by the Washington Post and actually by CNN. And that is that she fudged, if you want to, or, she allegedly illegally backdated a tax-exempt approval letter for an organization whose founder does business with a state sponsor of terrorists. In other words, she backdated an application for not-for-profit status for an outfit that supports terrorism. And that's a verifiable fact, has nothing to do with emails. The VA gate. I don't know whether you saw it or not, but the new chief of the Veterans Administration, since the old one just stepped down, the new chief of the VA has said that it will take 2 years and $17 billion to fix the VA. And out of that $17 billion, they're going to hire 1,500 new doctors, 10,000 workers, expand their facilities, yada, yada, yada. That's going to fix the VA. I'm a certified project manager. Part of what I do for a living is risk mitigation. One of my primary duties as a project manager to the day-to-day operations personnel that I report to is to manage the risk of the project. The VA, the risk of the project at the VA, this new guy coming in, his response should be, shut it down. Make an arrangement for all of these people to get the care that they need, supposedly from the private health care system. But that's kind of run afoul lately, and it's beginning to look more like the VA. But under normal circumstances, without the Affordable Care Act, the VA should just shut down and make arrangements for our veterans to get preferential treatment in the private health care system. And by preferential treatment, that doesn't just mean timing and appointments. That means cost and benefits. They paid the price. They deserve the best. I know there's a lot going on in the news about Israel and the Israelis and Hamas. You need to know that if you don't, not too long ago, there was an article published in the Israeli newspaper written by President Obama praising the Hamas leaders, not saying a word about Prime Minister Netanyahu, and telling Netanyahu that he needs to get on board and come to a peaceful solution. Netanyahu's response in this email was, "Hey, Obama, you kidding me? Fix your own borders and work with your own country to fix your country's problems. We'll take care of ours." And as you know from what's in the news, they are taking care of theirs. Before we go to the break, that's absolutely perfect. I'm going to give you a real short, you hear her talk about the New World Order and fighting the New World Order, et cetera, et cetera. I ran into an article. I'll give you the bullet points from the article, and then we'll take a little break. Here's the reasons, in just bullets, the headings of the paragraphs, of why people are fighting the New World Order. The words, the greater good, collectivism, the philosophy of force, and I want you to think about these things in relative to what's going on today and see if you recognize any of them. Dishonesty as a policy, the hands of the few, and the opposite view. Those are the bullet points of the New World Order. Do you see any of those in practice today? And are any of those acceptable to you? with that, I'm going to get a sip of water. We'll take a little break, and we will be right back.
Rally the youth, come on, let's go. Been asleep for way too long. Time has come to break the chains that bind our freedom. 9 to 5, you think you've done all that's needed. Judging by your paycheck, do you think you've succeeded? There's more to life than work without meaning.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back. This is Doc Owen. You're listening to the Doc Owen Show on Spreaker.com. I had the opportunity to find a video. Hold on, I'm looking for the. I want to make sure I cite the correct source. It's a video, but I downloaded the sound because it is very important. I want you to hear what this gentleman has to say in reference to what's going on to the southern border. It will take up the bulk of the next, 12, 13, 14 minutes. The video was actually produced, and you can find their channel on YouTube, by Little Bonanza Productions. This is what they do. It's an excellent review. They also have I think a full-length video out there or something a little bit longer. But this one is an interview with a gentleman that I hope to have on the show in the next couple of weeks by the name of Zach Taylor. And with that, I will just turn it over to Mr. Taylor and let him tell you from his perspective, an insider's view of what's going on and the danger and challenges we face in the southern border of the United States.
My name is Zach Taylor. I'm a retired Border Patrol officer. My main job was understanding and having intelligence capabilities about drug smuggling across the U.S. border and human smuggling across the U.S. border to bring contraband and people into the United States. That's what I did for 26 years. National security is a component of the immigration laws and the reason that immigration officers exist. Because the immigration laws are designed to primarily do just two things: protect national security and public safety. The component of national security is the economy and American jobs, because the foundation of American society, which is the family unit, depends on jobs and the economy for their livelihood. On the other side is the public safety, which includes public health, and that is so the people will be secure in their persons and their property from outside source threats. In other words, people coming in to take over America by force or by subterfuge. Right now, Department of Homeland Security is in charge of, through Customs and Border Protection, the apprehension and collection of the illegal aliens. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention is in charge of the screening with the U.S. Public Health Service. I've never seen the CDC or U.S. Public Health Service work together with the Border Patrol at the border, ever. The agents are telling us that they're seeing some people that are obviously sick, with shivering type illnesses, with possibly dehydrating illnesses like diarrhea and vomiting. But those people are disappearing. We don't know what they have, where they're going, where they're taking them. Surely they're being quarantined somewhere. We just don't know where. And even the agents don't know what the diagnosis is of these illnesses. Tie that in with the fact that these people can come through almost anywhere in the world and are funneling into Mexico. And we already know there's epidemic levels of certain diseases in Mexico and Central America. We don't know if these people are showing these diseases, if they're even being screened for them. The real troubling part of this is we know that in West Africa right now, there's an Ebola outbreak that does not meet the parameters of communicable diseases. Normally, Ebola virus starts in the jungle and moves into an indigenous population in the jungle, and then from there into a larger population area. What they're experiencing in West Africa in 3 countries right now is an Ebola outbreak in 3 separate cities at the same time. This is very unusual. It is almost as if the virus was planted in those 3 cities to infect that population. In other words, the virus is working in the reverse of what it has historically. Before it moved from the jungle into the populated area, now it's starting in the most populated areas in those cities and working through the population. If we had a control event, I'll give you an example. Border Patrol has a drug smuggling operation and they've been surveilling it. And after the car loads up and takes off, we stop the car. And the person driving the car hands us a diplomatic passport, saying they're a diplomatic alien inside the United States. We stop right there. We call the Department of State. The Department of State takes it from there. The person is not prosecuted. Yes, we may or may not seize the vehicle and the drugs. The United States public never knows that happened. That's a controlled event. In this situation, where you have hundreds of thousands, literally, of people coming across the border, and you're only catching a small fraction, if you're not telling the public that 80 to 90% of what's coming across the border is not being apprehended, and you're putting their focus on this 10% that is being apprehended, only showing them the 1% that are 6, 8, 10 years old, and appeal to the compassion of the American people, and not show them the people with these serious communicable diseases, the fact that they are known gang members, they have the gang tats all over them, because they do not have a conviction in the United States, they're turned loose free in the United States. We don't know when CDC takes custody of one of these people from Homeland Security and whisks them off somewhere, we don't know where, what disease they have been diagnosed with. We know it's communicable. We assume it's serious. But that is being kept away not only from the agents in Department of Homeland Security, it is part of the controlled event where America doesn't realize how serious the threat is, and they're only being shown the compassionate side of the situation. That 1 to 2% of those 160,000 that appeal to the compassionate side of the people of the United States. What the people don't realize, that it is putting their own children at risk. Because these children are going to be put in schools with their children. This administration and past administrations have not lived up to enforcing the rule of law with regards to national security and immigration laws. The reason we're having the press of the Central American miners is because this particular administration has invited them to come here. The problem, as I see it, and as apparently because Center for Disease Control, Health and Human Services, and Department of Homeland Security are trying to make this a control situation, they're anticipating a large national crisis. When you see that FEMA is preparing for 200 million deaths in the United States, that tells you something. When you see that the government is controlling the supply of ammunition and that basic medical supplies are in short supply in southern Arizona, something's wrong. They are anticipating something drastic. If they had enforced the law, if they did enforce the immigration law, and if they had expeditiously removed these people that came here, this group of miners, they would have dealt with this situation. The way they are reacting to it is facilitating and inviting more of the same. So what they're doing is making a bad situation much worse. The real reason these people are probably coming here from an intelligence point of view is to mask or draw attention away from something else that is happening. Since the United States government is encouraging this, It is something that the United States government wants to happen. They have significant CIA, FBI, Department of State, Homeland Security, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, you name it, in Central America right now, have been there a long time. They know what's going on. We're not doing anything to stop the obvious threat. 2 years ago, I became acquainted with a person that lives in Mexico City. Have complete, total confidence in this person as an informant. He's beyond reproach. And he told me, when I asked him, I was concerned about two things. And that was the trafficking of human organs in Mexico and the extreme violence, the beheadings and dismemberments that were going on in Mexico. Now, understand this person is pretty much as an unbiased observer that has almost unlimited access to all levels of both government and society in Mexico. Without hesitation, he told me that the most influential criminal organization in Mexico City at that time was the Russian Mafia. And through other sources, I knew that they were a very important component in Ecuador and in the tri-border area in South America. So when you start to think about the dynamics of what's going on in Mexico, think transnational criminal. Think of people beyond Mexico. Think beyond Central America. And think of criminals, period. The reason they come to the United States is because this is where the money is. The agent is much more afraid of his own government than he is of the transnational smuggler. Because they're not only messing with the agent's pay right now, they're telling him to run away from an assault. You know, if somebody wants to fight, leave them alone. Don't shoot at anybody. They just told the local Border Patrol here that they're not going to get any ammunition for their rifles until 2015. What's that about? They're not going to have any practice ammo for their Car 4s until 2015. Well, that's over a year away. FY 2015 starts in October 2015. So what is it that the Border Patrol agents aren't going to get where historically Department of Homeland Security used to buy ammunition for the Border Patrol by the boxcar load?
You're saying the Border Patrol agents in Tucson sector have to ration their ammunition for the next 14, 15 months?
They can't use it. They're doing zero accountability. In other words, they can't shoot any of it, and it's being accounted for round for round. The rules are you have to practice, you have to qualify, demonstrate proficiency at a minimum level with each firearm that you're authorized to use. Handgun, shotgun, rifle. When the agent is, one, not allowed to maintain his basic proficiency with the firearms that he uses and train with them on a quarterly basis, he is less proficient. If he is less proficient and doesn't have access to ammunition, he's less likely to take that firearm into the field and have it available should he need it. That raises the risk level to the individual agent. Because the purpose of having the superior fire force is to deter someone from attacking you. The whole idea of asymmetrical warfare is to defeat your enemy from within. It is not to attack him from without. Of course, the threat comes from without, but they have to be inside of the United States to effect a successful warfare strategy. If asymmetrical warfare is going to be successful, the first thing that has to be done is to compromise America's defenses against invasion. Because they have to have their personnel inside the United States to affect the infrastructure. Our hospitals, our schools, our electric grid, our power supplies, our water supply. Basically, what we call infrastructure. All of those things create our infrastructure. But they have to affect the degeneration from inside the United States. The markers that we're seeing that indicate this is asymmetrical warfare is because the reaction that the United States is taking is they're taking the opportunity of inviting these illegal aliens to come here. They're concentrating them in one place in the United States, the Rio Grande Valley, and they're drawing the resources that are protecting the rest of the United States border to care for the illegal alien children, to help with the overflow of the minors, to transport, to take care of the needs of these people while they're in Homeland Security custody. All this takes the resources that are protecting America at the border off of the border. So now the borders are wide open. This gives the people that are trying to get their infrastructure, their personnel, their drugs, their dirty bombs, their biological weapons, their chemical weapons into the United States without being noticed, because this part of the border is open. It is not being patrolled. It is a perfect military strategy. It doesn't raise any eyebrows because we're focused on the children. But we need to focus on our children, because this is asymmetrical warfare. Everything says it is. And the way the United States government is responding to it is concealing that fact from the American people. In other words, they're assisting in the downfall of America. And you need to understand that.
Oh, say, can you see?
This is Madison Rising. I wanted you to hear some of their music. It is absolutely fabulous, inspiring, and a wonderful group. Got a 29-second limit, not imposed by them, but iHeartRadio. So I had to cut that one a little bit short. But when I pick up here in just a second, you'll be able to hear another 29 seconds, and then I'm going to encourage you to do something. So here they go again. Madison Rising. Pay attention.
Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the red marks we watched were so gallant, they streaming, and the rockets.
Folks, we went straight into the break intentionally. One, we were running a little bit long. Number two, I saw absolutely nothing that I could add to what Zach Taylor was saying, other than the fact to reinforce, if you missed the last 15 minutes, that Mr. Taylor is a retired 26-year veteran of the Border Patrol. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And so those are the types of sources and resources that I go to when I provide you with information. It's not just my gut reaction. And before I forget about it, we're going to have a very interesting guest on the show next week, a young lady by the name of Emily Eakins. She is the polling director for an outfit called the Reason Foundation. I happened to see her in passing being interviewed on Fox News. She has developed some very interesting research on millennials, a topic in which that I am interested in, and I think my audience is interested in. She's got some most recent data. She asks some very interesting questions, and she's found out some things that we all need to pay attention to and assist and understand as we go forward. So be sure to join us next week when we will have Emily Eakins on the air. The week after that, I am planning to do a live interview a personal interview with Mr. Taylor, not having to go through that YouTube so I can ask him some one-on-one questions that might be a little bit closer to home. I found an article that very succinctly pointed out something that I thought was interesting. It offers 5 steps to solving the southern border crisis, as it calls it. Step number 1, DACA must go. In 2012, the president instituted a policy called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So it was set a precedent that encourages further unlawful migration, particularly among minors. So what you're seeing today is a direct result of that 2012 policy and the promotion of that 2012 policy south of the border. That it simply must be repealed. It must be negated. Step 2, resist the urge to throw money at the problem, which was the first thing he asked for, $4 billion to hire lawyers to represent the children that are the problem that they created through the 2012 Act. Step number 3, work within the existing budget and appropriations process. In other words, the money is there. Reappropriate it to the right channels and do it according to the law. Facilitate expedited removal. You've heard a lot, I'm sure, at least something about this 2008 law, which is often cited as restricting expedited removal of minors. It was intended to combat human trafficking, period. That was the intent of the law. And although the president has the authority under current law to facilitate the expedited removal of minors, the administration seems reluctant to fully exploit that authority. So they really cannot hide behind the 2008 law. Step number 5, use the tools at hand. For example, the president has the authority to deploy the military, in particularly the National Guard, to the border to provide assistance and support. So for us, rather than accept the politics as usual approach of just doing something to say a crisis has been addressed, Congress and the administration to take a disciplined, nonpartisan approach that would provide more than a Band-Aid for the problem and talking points for campaign speeches. I have been very active on Twitter with tweets over the course of the last few days. The theme, and I am basically pushing back, reaching out, attacking, whatever you want to call it. Every politician that comes on Twitter wrings his hands and points his finger at someone else to fix the border. This is something that I learned as a PhD in leadership. Leaders do. Period. Don't point your finger and tell somebody else to do it. That's not leadership. Leadership is do it and say, watch this. In the military, you don't tell the guys to go take the hill. You lead them up the hill and say, follow me. That's what needs to be done. So whoever those people are need to step forward and do it. Take control. And if you think I'm kidding you about the background, we've got additional information that's surfaced. Obama originally ordered the construction of a $50 million luxury resort, literally, for illegal aliens. It's called the Palm Air, I think, in Weslaco, Texas. Somebody posted a couple of years ago that they stayed at the Holiday Inn right next to it, and they said that something very suspicious was going on next door. Well, fortunately, as an update to that article, that project has been shut down due to the local pushback and local response in Weslaco, Texas. But the intention was to house about 600 illegals in this very, very nicely done apartment complex down right near the river, right down in South Texas. Okay, something else. Remember me talking about HUD and the challenges with HUD, and the former mayor of San Antonio has just accepted his appointment as the head of HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Under a regulation in October, the Obama administration will be empowered to condition eligibility for community development block grants on redrawing zoning maps to create evenly distributed neighborhoods based on racial composition and income. In 2012, HUD dispensed about $3.8 billion of these grants to almost 1,200 municipalities. So the grants have been, the money's been funded, and starting in October, the administration gets to tell those 1,200 municipalities how and where to spend it to create racial equality in those cities. In other words, you might look for a very nicely built apartment complex to show up in your neighborhood, and if your neighborhood is underpopulated in terms of Hispanics, your new neighbors will be from south of the border. And it's all been put in place. Keep your eyes and ears open. I also posted a map on Facebook of where all of these folks are going. And if you listen to my podcast from Monday night, my primary concern with the dispersion of all of these young people is the health issue. This stuff, whatever it is being spread all over the United States. It will be in school with your child this fall. I would be willing to bet on it. It's a major, major issue, folks. Sealing off the border is one thing, but this is a manufactured crisis of huge proportions. I'm not going to get off of it. I'm not going to get off of it anytime soon, no matter what else goes on. The reason being, the title of the show, the title of the Thursday shows, is always Docs America minus X. And the X in the title is the number of weeks we have left until 2014. I want there to be a 2014 election. I want folks to be prepared. I want them to know what's going on around them. This is a major issue that's going on around you. It should help you make your 2014 decision. I'll most likely do midweek off-day podcast simply because I can't let it build up from Thursday to Thursday and get it done in 45 minutes. I can barely get it done in two 45-minute sessions. So we're coming up on the end of it, and you're about to listen to the Going Away song, and when you hear the word rock, replace it with the word doc, and I will be right back.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock.
folks, this is Doc Owen. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. It's been a pleasure to have you. We left quite a bit on the table just because there's so much to cover. Have a good week. Pay attention. God bless. Good night.